Amen. Y'all continue to give the Lord a hand clap in this house. What's up, family? Y'all doing all right? It's indeed with great humility that I am honored to have the privilege to stand before you all today in the historic St. James A&M. Shout out to my fraternity brother and one of the dopest pastors, I do believe, that is here on this side of the Mississippi, Reverend J. Augustine. Y'all give him a hand clap. He definitely has a pastor's heart. He's unlike any other man of clergy I've had the privilege of serving with or under, and that he is always mindful that the service of God have needs too. And he has always been gracious to give a listening ear and a place of refuge where myself and my beautiful fiance can come and find our place. We also want to give thanks to his beautiful bride, his wonderful family that has sustained him to do this diligent work, as well as the laboring hands that have serviced this church 174 years. That's 174 years. And we want to recognize that. As our sister said earlier, this is a place that our ancestors built, brick by brick. And I'm so grateful that we, with due diligence, have sustained this place, a place where our enslaved ancestors, newly freed ancestors, people who dared Jane and Jim Crow, to find a place of spiritual refuge. And that, not under our watch, has this place been banished to the pages of history. When I was in Atlanta, as my seminary there, when they were building a new Mercedes-Benz Superdome, it was highly controversial because they tore down some historical black churches. And it was a really rough time because it put in question people's mind, where does our priorities truly lie if we are a Christian nation, where we prize money over people, where we prize money over God's sanctuary, where the church stood on those things. And so I'm ever mindful that in today's time that we are always fighting this struggle where we're trying to be good Americans, but we're also trying to be good Christians, and sometimes lines get a little blurred. But it is my prayer on today that as we gather in a sacred hall that we can draw back to memory who we truly are. And so today I just want to ask you all to join with me as I do the scripture reading for today's message, which will be coming from Exodus 3rd chapter, verses 1 through 15. Exodus 3rd chapter, verses 1 through 15. I'll be reading from the New Revised Standard Version of Exodus 3rd chapter, verse 1 through 15. And the Word of God reads, Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian. And he led his flock beyond the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire. Out of a bush he looked, and the bush was blazing, yet it was not consumed. Then Moses said, I must turn aside and look at this great sight, and see why the bush is not burnt up. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Come no closer. Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. He said further, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I observe the misery of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry on account of their taskmasters. Indeed, I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them from the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the country of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. The cry of the Israelites has now come to me. I have also seen how the Egyptians oppressed them. So come, I will send you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? He said, I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you, that this is I who sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God on this mountain. But Moses said to God, if I come to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me, and they ask, what is his name? What should I tell them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. He said further, thus you shall say to the Israelites, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, thus you shall say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my title for all generations. Amen. Amen. Please join me for a brief prayer. God of our ancestors, as we gather in this place, we are calling upon you to hear a good word. Lord, we ask that you put in perfect alignment those things that Anita said, we may be quicker to hear and slow to speak. We ask that you touch our minds and may contemplate the mystery of your word and touch our hearts so that we may have room to receive your overflowing love. Lord, we know that within this crowd, people are dealing with some things that they don't even want to give breath to, some things that they're ashamed of, some things that they're still struggling with. But God, we know that you are the one to whom all things belong. God, you are the God of all victory. And we know upon you, O Lord, that we are in good hands. So within this hour, Lord, use me as I will. Help me, O God, to reach those in need of your word and the reassurance that you are always with us. Forward forever, backwards never. Amen. 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 So, in preparation for the sermon, I usually don't name my sermons. I don't know, I think it's kind of back. Sometimes I just really think it is. It just doesn't feel like it's me. But I think God is doing something with me in this interesting season, whereas I believe God is calling me to preach a sermon series. And as of right now, the sermon series is called From Miseducation to Re-Education. I got inspired from Prodigy Woodson, the Miseducation of the Negro. Whereas as a millennial, and it feels kind of weird because I was born in the 80s, and I remember when Tupac and Biggie died, and, I think golden era of hip-hop, that I see that the church collectively is struggling with some sort of an identity crisis. Not even necessarily the things that we can lift voice to when we talk about the reason why we don't go to church, the reason why we don't like being in church, the hypocrisy, the judgment, the people that say one thing but do another. Those people who like to come here with a certain title or privilege to be recognized, when they come out and get your hands dirty, oh, brothers and sisters, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. When I was rapping with Pastor, I'm like, God, you gotta check yourself, man, because you're actually asking people today with this social justice movement to do something that they have never really quite done before until we look into the page of history of the civil rights movement. That is turning our faith from a spectator sport into a faith with legs, with action, with compassion, that goes into those places and works in the areas where God is calling for us to do. That is a tall task. However, God has never called us when times have been easy. It is oftentimes when God calls us is when we are needed the most, when things ain't so good, when things are a little bit ugly. That's a constant reassurance that our help comes from God. And so within this time, I see it's befitting that within this text that we tackle this calling of Moses. And so the title of this sermon is called Ubuntu. I am because we are. We are, therefore I am. Y'all repeat after me. Ubuntu. 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 I am because we are. I am because we are. Because we are, therefore I am. Because we are, therefore I am. Ubuntu. Ubuntu. I am because we are. I am because we are. Because we are, I am. Because we are, I am. Now this sounds African, don't it? Yep, down to the bristle. It sounds like Mother Africa, because it is. I don't quite know where this word actually originated from, but from my casual studies, it seems that it become more prevalent from South Africa. Kendrick Lamar, when he came out with his album before this current one called To Pimp a Butterfly, and his song Mortal Man, when he talks about the plight of leadership in today's time, he reflects upon his time in South Africa when he went to the cell where Nelson Mandela was captive. And in that area, Ubuntu was one of the things that resonated deep within the core of the indigenous people within that land, who were plagued with apartheid, all sorts of legalistic or systemic racism and oppression. Ubuntu. So, what does Ubuntu mean? It sounds cool to say. We already recited those words, but what story is it telling? When you put it in conversation with the Christian narrative of the second of the highest law upon which Jesus the Christ had said, all the laws of the prophets be hanging off that thing. Love thy neighbor as you would yourself. It forces you to not only think about one's own well-being, but to consider the well-beings of others. To know that you come from a people. I am because we are. My mother, Ronald Bliss Ellis and Jenny Roos Ellis. She hates when I say her middle name. Don't tell my mama said that. They come from my ancestors who have worked diligently, and I'm the answered prayers of my ancestors coming to fruition. And so they nourish me to where I go off into the deep and I do my own thing, find who I am. But to have a full life, I must consider the needs of not only my family, but the need of God's family. This holy communion we're called to. And so I'm called to work diligently for the needs of other people. Ubuntu. So every time I say Ubuntu, y'all repeat after me, Ubuntu. 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 So, what all this thing? What we have with all this? Well, let's get into the text. Who's familiar with the story of Moses? Nobody? Y'all need to wake up. Come on. I done did all this talking about spectating sport and working. Y'all gonna talk to me. Y'all gonna participate. Alright? I know the Saints playing, but sometimes the preach word can be way from more of you than Drew Brees and Cats can. They got theirs. Don't you want to get yours? You know what I'm saying? Come on now. How many of y'all familiar with the story of Moses? Alright, cool. So we got some people familiar, we got some people that may not be so familiar, so let's do a quick recap. The story of Moses, and it goes a little something like this. Egypt. One of the birthplaces of so many different religions that drew so much influence, to include the Christian narrative. We baptized baby Maddox over here. I had the privilege when I was over in Jordan to baptize several soldiers, including some from the Special Forces community, in the Jordan River. That's right, I said Jordan. I'm trying to mimic the dialect here so y'all can relate to me. And while we were there, we actually saw the baptismal site of Jesus. Deeply moving moment. And we consider the legacy of the Messiah and what God is calling us forth to do. We can't help but see how it points back to Egypt, Africa. And the gospel always says too that out of Egypt I have called my son, to fulfill the words that were said by the prophets. Because when sweet baby Jesus, Mary and Joseph, about as small as baby Maddox right there, when King Herod was after them, they took flight and they went to Egypt. Kemet, or Kemet, K-E-M-E, land of the burnt face, land of the black face. Egypt. Kemet. And so, Christianity has African roots. Judaism has African roots. And the challenge today is the only thing that can't be African in the AME church is the word African. Christianity is a traditional African religion. And it's time that we tell the story and we get it right. And we find our story and not be ashamed, because it's inclusive. Africa is the birthplace of all civilization, including Judeo-Christian faith. And so when it's time in Egypt, Joseph the Dreamer, y'all remember Joseph the Dreamer? The brother with the real fly jacket with many colors, who interprets dreams? Well, when he was sold into slavery by his brothers who were hating on him, then got sold into a home where the mistress was trying to get him caught up in the closet R. Kelly type things, which landed him in the slammer in Pharaoh's prison. And when an opportunity came, somebody remembered him and called him forth to interpret the dream of Pharaoh. Pharaoh's like, man, I'm bugging out, dog. I got a skinny cow that looked raggedy and tore up. I got this fat cow, but the skinny cow that ate up these fat cows, and bro, he's still skinny. I was telling my fiance I had this weird dream last night, so I don't know the Lord's messing with me, but hey, but Joseph was there to interpret the dream, and he found favor, and so Joseph had the opportunity to manage all the Pharaoh's affairs. Time went by, he was able to get his brothers and his family of Jacob into Egypt. About 70 of them were in number, and they multiplied, they grew, they prospered, they did so well in Egypt. To the point, time passed, and they grew in power and influence. And there was a Pharaoh who did not know Joseph. That's where the trouble began. When the powers that be take no regard in the history of the people that have, with their blood and their sweat, built a nation. When they forsake their ancestors and their history on how they built a country, bad things happen. There was a Pharaoh who did not know Joseph. And he was shook. He said, yo, these cats, man, they popping. Whatever they try to do, they're making his bread, they multiplying his numbers. You know what's going to happen? When it pops off, they're going to side like enemies, and then they're going to sell us out. Nah, never that. What we're going to do, we're going to have sign taskmasters and put them in slavery. Right? I think about the burning of Black Wall Street when I reflect on that. I think about Rosewood when I think about that. I think about the Freedom Riders when I think about that. Right? The fear, xenophobia, the fear that anything foreign to you will take you over. Yeah. That doesn't sound like the love of God. Anyway, so they began to oppress them. They began to give birth even more when they were in a place of oppression. And the Pharaoh's like, I don't understand this. We got to mix this. Midwives, this is what y'all going to do. Whenever y'all go over here to give birth or help deliver these children of Israelites, you will kill the boys, but let the girls live. Well, they feared God. And so they didn't do as the Pharaoh said. And they came up with an excuse saying, hey, Pharaoh, I know you told us to go up here and kill these babies, but they ain't like this Egyptian systems. Boy, them childbearing hips, they just pushed them right on out. By the time they got there, it was too late. God saw favor and hooked them up with families of their own. But the Pharaoh, he thought he was slick. He was like, now check this, what we're going to do. We're going to kill all the male babies. Whatever, forget that. We're coming for their neck. Well, around that time, that's when Moses was born. And his mother hid Moses for about 3 months until she had him no longer. And until the time came, she put him in this basket. I think it was papyrus. Was it papyrus or something? I can't remember the material. I don't read the instructions when I put things together. But she engineered this watertight basket and placed sweet baby Moses in it and put it in the Nile River and set it down this way. But she was smart, like many of our mothers are. She knew what time it was. She was strategic. She put that basket in the Nile River that would lead sweet baby Moses down to Pharaoh's daughter. Reminds me of the genius of our mothers today. Our mothers, they couldn't fix every problem in our lives. They were struggling to keep things together. They were struggling to be a mother, to be a wife, to be a hard worker, to be the therapist, to be the nurse, to be the doctor. They did the best they could, but they did it out of love. And so his mother's time came to an end where she had to think a little differently to preserve the life of her children. How many of y'all here today because of some mothers in your lives preserve you all against some real challenging times? The church still stands today because our mothers have endured during some difficult times, protecting us and making sure we have a sanctuary to be safe in. Yes. Shout out to our mothers. She sent it down the Nile River, and his sister Miriam, kept watching that, was creeping along the way over to Pharaoh's daughter. And when she looked down at that chocolate baby and was like, oh, so precious. Like you look into the baby, it's like Sister Moody got her beautiful son over here, we got sweet baby Madison. When you look at it and say, boy, that's so precious. When those sprinkles hit little Madison's head, and it was his baby head, his dude, you know that did something to you. You know it did. I tell you, well, you got a charm right there. You know what I'm saying? Put him on game, you know what I'm talking about? And so, Miriam, raised in the ways of her mother, had game, had insight, quickly popped out of the bushes and said, ma'am, would you like me to find someone to raise this Hebrew child for you? I got you. She's a great babysitter. She got low rates. She's highly recommended. She get 5 stars. Hey, we can give you a discount. And Pharaoh's daughter's like, that. So Pharaoh actually went and gave the baby back to Moses' mama to be raised and paid her for it until he was old enough to get back in the house. Now, that ain't the hustling of our mothers. I don't know what it is. When you legit get paid to raise your own child, how many of y'all mothers in here would like to get raised or get paid to raise? Yeah, look at it. You see the eyebrows. But that's what happened. That's the genius of our mothers during a time of oppression. And so she had more time with her son, and this time she was guard protected. Well, time came, he went to Pharaoh's house, he grew up, he was there for about 40 some odd years at this point, to where Moses grew tired of seeing his people oppressed with the bitterness of chattel slavery. In the New Revised Standard Version, he sees his kinfolk, no, he was country, his kinfolk getting handled by an Egyptian. And so what he does, he looks to his left and to his right, and he sneaks up on him, and he kills the Egyptian and buries him in the sand. Almost like James St. Patrick, also known as Ghost in the hit Star show called Power, who is very clean and polished on the outside, but boy, there's some skeletons in that closet. That boy is grimy. And boy, when he get mad, he balls up on you, they call him Ghost for a reason. And so he covers the Egyptian in sand, and he's out. Time passes, he sees two other Hebrews arguing with each other. He pops out and says, hey man, y'all, come on man, we people, man. You know what I'm saying? We need to survive. Divided we fall, together we stand. He was trying to stop them from arguing. And they were like, say brother, who sent you here to be the Lord over us? You want to kill us like you did that Egyptian? Moses was shook. He said nothing. And he was in fear that Pharaoh would find out, which he did, and was going to come kill him. At that moment, we see Moses in a position that I think many of us can relate to. When we see people in their ivory towers who act like they really care about our struggles and come and try to tell us what we need to do to fix our problem. You know those people. The reason why sometimes you can argue and go with the people that you're with because you love them and you can tell them whatever's on your mind. But that's love. Love is sticking in the water. You always have a way to work that thing out. It may not look like the way other people want it to look, but you work it out anyhow. But it was hard for Moses to try to lead the people who wanted freedom while he was sleeping in a slave master's house. It's hard to feed people who hungered for liberation when he ate at the slave master's table. You can't do that. It's unrealistic. He wanted to lead the people but keep his privilege. God couldn't do nothing with that. Sometimes we hold on to our little piece of privilege that we think we really work hard all by ourselves to achieve. And we greet people at a distance, or try to serve people at a distance, not trying to get too close, because we don't want to mess up what little bit of privilege we think we got. R.L. Johnson, when we came and preached one time, we talked about, man, y'all forgive me, I'm not perfect, I can't remember the exact scripture you quoted, but Paul was rapping at him about how love is like the greatest gift. No matter what you do, if you don't do it out of love, it don't matter at all. Ain't that what you experienced a time or two? When you peel back the layers of some people's quote-unquote advice or help, you realize that they're only thinking about their own needs and truly instead of yours. They position themselves to help you out so that they can ultimately advance them. We see that in the church for sure. People say that all the time. But we really look and examine our lives. We ourselves have been guilty of the same thing. God can't do nothing with that. Maybe it was even something that Carl G. Woodson talked about in his first chapter about the miseducation of the Negro, that when you go, you're educated in higher learning, that it intentionally teaches you that your culture is inferior, and that it praises the culture of another. Now, we don't have that problem today in our curriculum, now do we? Y'all better talk to me. Man, y'all silence, man. Y'all got me shook over here. Maybe it may not say something directly about the contribution of other people, but it's something about the act of omission. When you bleach the store, you can't talk about how people from all over have contributed with their genius to make something stand. That's another act of insult in itself. As if you didn't matter enough to even be mentioned. Be careful who's educating you. Because you may be using false doctrine and the people you think you call to serve. And so, Moses got shook. He did what many of us will do whenever you've been had. I know I've been had. Am I the only one that's been had? Right? You get extra defensive, and then you buck out. You know what I'm saying? You get ghost. And so he did. And he went to Midian, where he hooked up at the water well with some sisters who had their camera, because Jethro told him to go out there, you know, do the due diligence, and was out there at the well. And the well was actually a hookup spot. If you were a Rattler or a native of Tallahassee, that would be called top flight. That would be called top flight. If you're here in New Orleans, maybe at Handsome Willie's or the Dragon's Den. What's another junk joint? Come on. Where you go to meet somebody at and have a good time? Huh? What? Pastor, he heard it. He heard it, right? But it was a accommodated hookup spot. But, you know, he wasn't really there to kick game. He was really probably just there chilling to seek refuge because it was a well. And he saw some shepherds getting at Jethro's daughter, so he fights him off, gives the camel something, or the sheep something to drink, and helps him send on the way. Jethro is completely impressed when his daughter comes back and says, hey man, come get me, that's a good dude. How many fathers out here got daughters, and you just overjoyed when your daughter brings home a good dude? I mean, yeah, there you go, represent. Hey, that's a good dude, go bring him over here. And he actually hooks him up with his daughter, Zipporah. And the Bible says that Zipporah was a Cushite, dark-skinned, chocolate sister. Read your Bible, Genesis 10th chapter, the Table of Nations, descendants of Ham, a Cushite woman. And so, hey, he was living life at this point. But if you ever try to date a sister, and you tell about all the things you used to do, yeah, baby, I was in Pharaoh, I was in filet mignon and steak, I had to play on ice, all icy. But you ain't got no job? Zipporah's like, you better have a J-O-B if you want to be with me. And so, like any good brother who recognized he got a good thing with you, he got a J-O-B. He was working as a shepherd for his father-in-law, Jethro. And this is the part of the scripture we pick up where he's actually now coming out of the wilderness into Mount Horeb, which is also known as Mount Sinai, also known as the mountain of God. And he sees something very peculiar. He sees a burning bush that ain't being caught on fire. Well, I mean, it's on fire, but ain't being burnt up. I'm country workers. And he's like, man, I need to go check this thing out, right? How many of y'all today will go check out a burning bush that wasn't assumed? We got one, we got two. It was a bizarre sight, but something about it drew him closer to it. And in that moment, you heard a booming voice come from the bush telling him, Moses, bruh, chill. I appreciate you coming here right now. You know what I'm saying? You didn't have to do it, but you did. Thank you for coming. But you got to come off them shoes, dog. You're on holy ground right now. Right? This is an interesting part of Moses' story because some people say that on one extreme, that if it was a burning bush, could it be that it was herbal, possibly has some medicinal purposes? And when the leaves caught fire, that it let out a beautiful bouquet of aroma. And that when he inhaled it, he became intoxicated, engulfed in the aroma of the OE, this herb. And he was having a psychedelic trip, where he's having this deep moment and profound thoughts. I mean, I know what I'm talking about. I did not inhale. Shout out to President Bill. But on one hand, they say that could it be that this was not a physical burning bush, that rather this bush was metaphoric, symbolic of the meeting place upon which we meet our Creator. Howard Thurman, the spiritual mentor and Martin Luther King, had the first desegregated church in San Francisco, talks about the Century Movement, where God can also be seen not only as up high, but down low, but more importantly, within. And it's within that secret place, that sacred place, where Moses has that communion with God. Regardless of what you believe, what the text will tell you is that it was holy. Yeah. It was sacred. He had to humble himself. Yeah. And he had to remove the shoes from his feet. That's a symbol of extreme vulnerability. It's like somebody telling you to take your shoes off and walk down Bourbon Street. Not going to happen, because you're thinking about all the stuff that's going to get you on your foot, the stank that's going to take a month to wash off. It's a symbol of extreme vulnerability. And he meets his maker. And his maker calls forth for him to do the work of liberating God's people. This is a shift in his story, to where he no longer can want to do things on his own accord, but rather he has to do it upon the accord of our Creator. It's a terrifying moment. And within the conversation, jump a little bit forward, we know that he was definitely in an intimate, supernatural moment with him, because when he came into the presence of God, he couldn't help but bear truth his faults and his shortcomings. I've never been around a man or a woman that, when I'm in their presence, automatically makes me want to admit the wrongs that I've done. Or ask a question about, well, who do you think I am? Why do you want to send me? Now, it could be true he wanted to talk himself out of this mammoth task. But there's also a great sense of honesty that comes with it. Different from that time before when he was asking that question about who am I, who should I say sent me, but did things on his own accord. He was invited to do a personal inquiry and do an accurate vision check on who he truly was. But as we look in the text, God tells him what he wants him to do, and he says, hey, bro, you're going to set these people free, but be easy. I'm with you. God's presence was with Moses. And then he asked the same question, probably thinking about that last time he tried to lead his folk, when he said, who sent you? He asked God that question, like, who should I say sent me? Say that the God of your ancestors has sent you. And he's going to be like, which one? Like, who should I say? And God says, I am that I am has sent you. And so when you go talk to these people, and they start asking, yo, bro, this sounds real dope, but who's going to make this whole thing happen and why? Who sent you here? I am has sent me to you. And that's a very interesting way for God to respond to a very simple question. I am. I am. I am. If somebody came up to you and was saying that, hey, brother, looking sharp, you're winning right now. Got your blue thing, true thing on your side, right? Right? We're going to uplift these people in this impoverished community. And this is going to be great, and we're all going to be liberated. We're going to face forward, but it's going to be all right. Like any kind of person, you're going to ask the question, who sent you? Now, we listen to the text and conversation. If somebody were to ask you, who's going to have us do all these things? According to Moses, you would say, I am. He's spot on. His lips moved me right at the same moment. I am. I am. All right, let's speed this up. I know y'all ready to go to the Saints game. What do I mean by all this? What do I mean by all this? I am. He also says in the conversation, tell me the God of your ancestors, the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob has sent me to you. He's not simply declaring his title, he's declaring their story. He's reminding them of a time that when his ancestors had an encounter with God, it involved a struggle. And through that struggle, they developed an intimate, trusting relationship and truly knew who God was for them because they had no other way out. And so in this moment, when Moses was called forth and told to recite to the people the very thing that God told him, it was to reactivate their spiritual history, their ancestral legacy with the God that is still with them and will lead them out. You cannot lead yourself out without knowing the God of your ancestors. It is too cool to have all these degrees and these pedigrees, have all these skill sets, but if you don't know your spiritual legacy, if you don't know the people you come from, I promise you, you're going to find out one way or another that all the tools you give are not going to cut the mustard. You have to know your spiritual legacy. And that's what God is calling Moses to do for these people. Naeem Akbar, a dear fraternity brother of mine, wrote a critically acclaimed book, Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery. Also wrote this book, Know Thyself, where he talked about the educational system of the ancients. Not only involved reading, writing, arithmetic, but a spiritual identity built education system. And so it taught you who you were spiritually. And it gave you rituals and practices that you will do to fulfill the fullness of who you are. It matters not how smart you are on paper if you ain't got no street smarts. Street smarts is cool, but when you can't do things with your hand, who are you going to pray to? You have to be a holistic person, and our ancestors had an educational system that taught them the fullness of who they are. And so Moses, declaring that he would do this thing in the name of God, and when people ask him to say, I am, was simply saying that he put himself in alignment with God's will. With all his worldly experience and his spiritual legacy, that he's calling forth the God of his ancestors and petitioning us to do the same to find liberation in our current status. Brothers and sisters, that is really the message of the day. When we look back at the word I said before about Ubuntu, Ubuntu. I am because we are. Because we are, therefore I am. Moses couldn't answer that the first time around. We're in a current state in time where people do not trust the church. Could it be the church's enemies have been created by themselves with so many years of mistrust that has been inherited by the generation who have no spiritual roots? But this is a perfect time because now we don't have to rest with bad theology. We just got to come and do what we know we're supposed to do. In the name of I am the God who has sent us, as we tap into the ancestral legacy of our ancestors when the time worked for them before. I don't care how many degrees I get, how many places around the world I travel, how many people I meet, how many times I even ask a question, and it's okay for you to question this religion. I think about the God of Jenny Ruth Sellers, the daughter of a missionary Baptist preacher, who overnight made the choice that she was going to take her children out of a toxic marriage and become a single parent overnight. And would tell me time and time again how she would cry and pray herself to sleep. When she would go to work the graveyard shift at the United States Postal Service, and when she would get off, she would get in her car, close her eyes, and wake up in her driveway. More times than one. And would not hesitate to tell you again and again the miracles through the name of the Messiah, Jesus the Christ, that these things were done. If you ain't got your own faith, that's cool. Use the faith of your ancestors. We need the church today. I feel you, the church got problems. Anytime you put people in an organization, there's going to be problems. But when we align ourselves with God, that is what gets us in a fight to know that things are going to be all right. Nowhere else can you go to harvest and put together your spiritual identity but the church. As progressive as our other institutions are, who are going to deal with the realities of our life and ask the hard question, why God? When you go through these regular situations, you're going to ask the question, where God? Nowhere else but the church. It is up to us to build the spiritual community that we need. The time of just pointing the finger at leadership and other church folk and blaming them while you sit down and you know that every church ain't like that, but you make up in your mind that you still ain't going to go to church or you're not going to do anything to build your spiritual practice, that time is over. Do not be like those people that I sit and I counsel. I go to their homes, I go to their hospital, I go to wherever they are in a place of crisis, and they talk about what they're going through. When I ask them, well, what have you told God? And they say absolutely nothing. They have no spiritual roots or legacy. The time to get close to God is not when you're in a time of peril. You got issues, you got beef, work on it. It ain't nobody else's job but yours. We must challenge ourselves to take ownership of our faith. And be like Moses. We're all not going to be perfect. It's cool. No one is asking us to be perfect. Just asking us to be honest. And this time, Moses had to be honest with his shortcomings. And God fortified him in ways unimaginable. And we know how the story goes. It worked. You know, he liberated God's people. It had his struggles along the way. Moses still wasn't perfect. He was still being worked on. But just like many of us today, too, nobody's perfect in this church either. But you got to give God a chance. Have that honest moment with yourself and understand that you ain't got it all together, too. But it's all right. Because that's the perfect time to take these broken pieces to God. to learn who God is, not the God that was fashioned in man's image, not the God that people justify to do bad things to vulnerable people, but the true God, the God who's always been on the side of the oppressed. You know, family, if it ain't for the church, what do we want to do this day? Pastor can't do it on his own. The silent service can't do it on their own. It is our responsibility. For the things that we see wrong in this community today require our hands to make it right. And we can do it. I believe we can. If we do it through God. If we do it together. As we move into a close, I want y'all to contemplate this, real talk. If you cool, awesome. But think about Moses when he had to take those shoes off his feet and be completely vulnerable and do a real inquiry. Make sure you ain't one of those people that Jesus talked about will be so quick to correct somebody else about them having a splint in their eye when they got a whole flagpole dripping out of theirs. You know who does. You know those people too that are in spiritual exile. I mentioned that before a time or two in prayer, right? If you identify that person, it's cool too. I think really the day and time that we at, specifically at Historic St. James, we have the wherewithal to build the spiritual community that we need. So in this time, I just want to open it up and let you all know that the doors of the church are open. So if you're looking for a spiritual